Hello viewers and welcome to today's lecture. The title of today's lecture is Differences between the Eastern and the Western Perspectives to Positive Psychology. In the earlier lectures we have talked about the Western perspectives and Eastern perspectives individually and how each of them focuses upon different areas, or there is a difference or a gap in their approach towards positive psychology, because there is an approach towards how people coming from these societies and cultures take life or understand life, or what is expected out of life. Positive psychology viewpoints vary across Western and Eastern cultures, reflecting differences in philosophical traditions, cultural values, and social norms. It is crucial to remember that these divisions are broad and there may be substantial variations within both Western and Eastern cultures. So now when we talk about the Eastern and the Western perspectives, again we need to understand that there is a wide range that exists when we talk about these perspectives. In the coming slides, we will learn about some major differences in the Western and Eastern ideas on positive psychology. Let us start our discussion on values. Western perspective. Western cultures are individualistic. Individual is the main focus and competition and achievement are valued. Western cultures value autonomy and personal freedom. And when we talk about Eastern perspectives, Eastern cultures are collectivistic. The group is valued above the individual and cooperation is highly valued. In Eastern culture, cooperation is given more importance. Sharing and duty towards the group is highly appreciated. So we see that the Western perspective is individualistic and the Eastern perspective is collectivistic. And as I said previously, though these two terms might clearly summarize the two perspectives, yet there may be a wide variation in these. When we talk about individualistic societies or individualistic ways of living, which it means that the individual is the main focus of life and existence, and while conducting their lives, the focus of an individual is to engage in activities or relationships which are beneficial to oneself. On the other hand, if we talk about the Eastern perspective, then group becomes more important than the individual, and India as a society falls into the collectivistic area or collectivistic culture, where groups, families and communities are considered more important. The norms are considered to be very precious and pious, and everyone tries to conform to what is expected out of them. Many a times individuals tend to sacrifice their own benefits for the benefit of all, which is not the case with the Western world and cultures. Individualism versus collectivism. Let me read out to you what I have put here. Many Western societies, notably in North America and Europe, the two continents, place a high value on individualism. Positive psychology in the West may emphasize personal strengths, happiness and self-fulfillment. So these three terms have been put here, which bring out or highlight the individualistic perspective very well, which is personal strengths and happiness and self-fulfillment. And let us talk about the Eastern perspective. Eastern civilizations, particularly those inspired by Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism, value collectivism. Positive psychology in the East may place more emphasis on harmony, relationships and collective well-being than on individual successes. Self versus interconnectedness. The Western perspective. Positive psychology in the West frequently emphasizes the self, personal development, and self actualization. Individual achievement and liberty are respected. So, we see that everything revolves around the individual when we talk about the West. It is self and personal development, self actualization, individualistic achievement, and liberty or freedom of oneself. Let's talk about the Eastern perspective. Eastern ideas frequently emphasize interconnection. So, here interconnection and relationship is emphasized, is important, which is missing out in the Western perspective. And the notion that the self is inseparable from the greater social and natural context. So, an individual's identity comes from the group, which is very significant here. In the previous lecture, we had talked about the Eastern perspective, and we said that at a transcendental and spiritual level also, individual's existence was only in harmony with his or her environment, and here we are understanding this in a socio-cultural context. The emphasis may be on relationships, harmony with nature, or community well-being. Now, in order to enhance our understanding of values with regard to the two perspectives better, let us take up the examples of a few stories. Those stories may not be very much a part of our main curriculum or method of study, but we all know that stories have always been a reflection of the values, virtues, strengths, characteristics of any society or culture. Now, if I talk about the Western perspective and the related stories, in Western stories, the hero faces evil on his own. Whether we talk about the Sleeping Beauty or the Rapunzel, etc., we see that the hero or the protagonist goes about fighting all the evils and the demons on his own without the support of anyone else. Again, a reflection of the individualistic society which focuses upon the achievements and accomplishments of the individual, where there is no hint of interconnectedness or group support. Many stories also depict people seeking personal gain rather than collective gain. If we talk about Eastern stories, which we will be doing in the upcoming slides, there is a talk about collective gain or people working for community well-being or the benefit of the community. But if we talk about the Western stories, that element misses at many places, and in fact, if someone comes about to help the hero or the protagonist, then that is only for getting something in return. So stories, I wanted to bring up these stories because stories are very, very interesting and amusing means of understanding these virtues and values which are rampant in societies. Now, in contrast, if I take up a story from Indian mythology of if I talk about Ramayana, then many stories emphasize on a community benefit and banding together to confront the demon. If we talk about the Ramayana, we see that Lord Ram is accompanied by an army of Vanaras who help him conquer a very, very powerful king across the sea, and how this Vanar Sena works in communion, in a team to reach a goal and to accomplish the task. If one goes on to analyze such stories, I am sure these are a treasure of values and virtues and strengths which are being talked about in many of the Western models today. Orientation to time. Now, the second component that we would be talking about is orientation to time in the Western and the Eastern perspective. The first one was values. Western culture is more oriented to the future. Western culture emphasizes goal setting, achievement and progress. Eastern perspective has respect for the past. The old Chinese saying, "To know the road ahead, ask those coming back," reveals a past focused mentality. Eastern civilizations, therefore, cherish the ability to look backward and appreciate the knowledge of their elders. Chinese fable "Old Horse Knows the Way" depicts this very well. So, we could say that the Western societies or cultures are forward looking. They look to what is about to come, prepare for that and how to do their best. On the other hand, the Eastern cultures, they emphasize upon learning from others, what mistakes they might have made, what experiences they might have collected. Further on, Western perspective, in fact, their future focused outlook is reflected in some of the characteristics they tend to value most, such as optimism, self-efficacy and hope. So, these characteristics, optimism, self-efficacy and hope, which are so much emphasized in the Western perspective, they so come about because of the future focused outlook of the Western perspective or civilizations. Some Eastern cultures, particularly those influenced by traditions like Buddhism, may emphasize present moment awareness and acceptance of the current situation, prioritizing the journey above the destination. Now, again, we have a few very interesting components here. Buddhism is talking about the present moment awareness. So, now we are not talking about the future, not talking about the past, but talking about the present moment awareness. And this reminds me so much of the mindfulness movement which is running across the globe these days. Mindfulness intervention strategies have become very popular among psychologists and therapists, and they are doing wonderful work in bringing about well-being and happiness to people. Buddhism talks about acceptance of the current situation. Again, acceptance being a very vital component of some of the very popular therapies of the world. If we talk about the radical acceptance component, then it has been popularized by many established psychologists. And in the end, prioritizing the journey above the destination. So, it is the way which is important and not where you have to reach which is ultimately important, according to Buddhism, coming from the Eastern perspective. Now, the third component which can help us to better differentiate the Western and the Eastern perspectives is the thought process. Western perspective. Western cultures place an importance on the right to life, liberty and the pursuit of happiness. A Westerner with the purpose of happiness draws a direct route to the goal, examining attentively for barriers and alternative ways around them. Their purpose is to find eternal bliss. So, the thought process of a Westerner is that one wants happiness, that is the goal, and there is a way. What barriers come about, you find a way around them and reach your goal, because eternal bliss is the goal. Now, let's see the contrast in the Eastern perspective. The Taoist image of yin and yang sign represents the Easterners' more circular thinking method. The figure reflects the world's round and ever-changing nature. So, while a Westerner might think that life is like a straight line, you have a goal to achieve which is happiness, you find a barrier, you find a way around it and reach your goal. The Easterner believes that life is a cycle and you come around to the same place, everyone has to go through this way. Now, this yin and yang figure is reflective of the ever-changing nature of life. The dark side signifies femininity and passivity, while the light side represents masculinity and activity. So both passivity and activity are a part of life, both ups and downs are a part of life, and it is a journey which everyone has to take up. Each portion exists because of the other and cannot exist without the other. So where there's going to be light, there's going to be dark. Where there's going to be day, there is going to be night, and none of them can exist without the other. So it is all about coexistence of challenges, sorrows, barriers, as well as happiness and bliss. The Easterner's purpose is to attain equilibrium. So here we are talking about equilibrium, while the West is talking about bliss. While the West is talking about taking that straight way, the Easterner is talking about the circular nature of life and existence. Differences in routes to attain positive outcomes. Western perspective, Westerners emphasize the individual aim more. A Westerner who wants to be happy draws a straight line to his destination, carefully avoiding obstacles and finding solutions. His purpose is to obtain eternal bliss. Easterners prioritize community or group objectives more. Easterner may have the goal of balance, believing that while great unhappiness or suffering may occur in one's life, it will equally be balanced by great happiness. So unhappiness will be balanced by happiness. This is the belief of the Easterner, and he is therefore able to take the challenges, the sorrows too, in his stride. And also Easterners prioritize community or group objectives in contrast to the Westerners, who emphasize the individual's aim more. Now let us talk about another difference between the Eastern and Western perspectives in regard to happiness, which is the hedonic versus the eudaimonic happiness approach. You can very well see in this diagram that the hedonic and the eudaimonic, the hedonic is more extrinsic or outcome based, and the eudaimonic is more intrinsic or process based. Now let us understand these in detail. Hedonic happiness refers to the pleasure and delight that result from pleasant events, such as obtaining a bonus or working in a comfortable environment. Hedonic enjoyment is vital, yet it can be fleeting and may not lead to long-term work satisfaction. So a hedonic happiness is based on the pleasure principle. So whatever gives us happiness, that delight is welcome. We get an out of turn bonus or an excellent result, or we stay in a comfortable environment. These are hedonic category of happiness. However, they are not long lasting, rather fleeting in nature. On the other hand, eudaimonic happiness is a more profound sense of purpose and fulfillment that stems from meaningful employment, personal development, and contribution to greater good. So the eudaimonic happiness is talking about something more grand and something more stable, and wherein the individual has a sense of meaningful existence, wherein the individual has the sense of contributing something to the greater good, and it is believed that such happiness is more long lasting and has been termed eudaimonic happiness. So the Eastern perspective holds on more to the eudaimonic happiness, and the emphasis is on process. It is upon intrinsic features. In contrast, the hedonic happiness is more extrinsic and outcome based. What we are getting in material terms, which can be counted or which can be talked about, and eudaimonic happiness is about what you experience, the sense of fulfillment. Hedonic is something that relates to the pursuit of pleasure to achieve happiness. Eudaimonic, on the other hand, is something that relates to pursuing meaning to achieve happiness in the long term. So I hope this difference has come about clear to everyone. Further on, positive psychology in the West, influenced by hedonic traditions, may emphasize the pursuit of pleasure, good emotions, and the elimination of bad experiences in order to attain happiness. On the other hand, Eastern traditions influenced by the eudaimonic ideals may emphasize a deeper sense of well-being that stems from a meaningful existence, purpose, and self-realization. Aligning oneself with one's dharma or life purpose leads to fulfillment. Further on, talking about happiness, happiness in Western society is defined as gaining self-esteem, self-confidence, being materially and financially comfortable, being successful, being attractive, being equal, being treated with respect, being able to assert one's rights and enjoy pleasures and comforts of life. Longani 2007. So if we talk about the Western perspective, this is how happiness is understood, and thereafter people are in pursuit of such things. On the other hand, in Eastern cultures, happiness is defined as an internal state of mind, being in peace, doing one's duties, keeping others happy, being responsible and respectful to oneself, family and society, and enjoying life as it goes with oneself, family and others. Longani 2007. So we understand the difference to happiness across the two perspectives. Let us now talk about the focus of the Eastern and the Western perspective. Westerners are more focused on hope, and the Easterners are more focused on compassion and harmony. In relation to individualism, hope is a term used to describe autonomous, goal-focused thought. It is intricately entwined with Western culture. Western civilization is deeply connected with the idea of an ideal future. Now again, here I would like to bring your attention to a short story of Abraham. The story of Abraham is exemplary of faith-based hope within the Western tradition. As mentioned in the story, Isaac, the son of Abraham, was saved by God himself. An important lesson that one can draw from the story is that often when we are faced with adverse circumstances, we must try and believe in doing good, as God will show kindness to those who believe in Him. Stories may not form the main streamlined method of teaching learning, but yes, stories are a great reflection of values, virtues and strengths, and they will also help us better understand the Western and Eastern perspectives, as they are a true reflection of the Eastern and Western cultural ethos. Compassion and harmony, collectivism. So if we talk about the Eastern perspectives virtues, primary ones being compassion and harmony, three criteria have been mentioned by Cassell. The receiver's problems must be severe, the recipient cannot cause his or her own problems, and the observers must be able to recognize the recipient's suffering. He defines compassion as a unilateral feeling directed outward from oneself. Now, Cassell says that how does this emotion of compassion come about? If you come across, if you have an interaction with someone, then the person undergoing some kind of a trouble, challenge or pain, the receiver's problems must be severe. So, the problem has to be extraordinary, intense. Then the recipient cannot be the cause of his or her own problem. So, the one who is undergoing pain is not responsible for whatever is coming upon him, and the observers must be able to recognize the recipient's suffering. Third and most important of all is that the observer, from whom the unilateral feeling of compassion flows outward, he must be able to recognize the recipient's suffering. So, this is what Cassell considered to be the three important criteria for compassion. Harmony is regarded as essential to happiness in Eastern civilizations. In Buddhist teachings, the term nirvana also denotes a condition of equilibrium, harmony, and balance. Example of compassion in Hinduism. Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita that a devotee should feel universal empathy. Sri Prabhupada translates this verse as follows: He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna. So this is a relation to you of the component of compassion entailed in the Bhagavad Gita. Example of compassion can also be taken from Ramayana, where Lord Rama's compassion towards Jatayu is an excellent example. He not only embraces Jatayu but also takes away all his agony. Compassion incorporates the qualities of equality and humanity, and we all are very familiar with the friendship of Sudama and Sri Krishna, and how Sudama is a poor Brahmin who, when steps onto the palatial residence of Krishna, and Krishna comes about running, embraces Sudama and gives him all the respect and love, and which is also reflected through the action of Lord Krishna washing the feet of Sudama. This again is an excellent example of compassion entailed in the Hindu traditions. In conclusion, the Eastern and the Western perspectives differ across collectivism versus individualism. Eastern and Western. So Eastern is about collectivism, soul and intellect, interrelatedness or oneness, harmony and unity, eudaimonic happiness. On the other hand, Western perspective is about individualism, accumulation of knowledge, separate parts from the whole, hope and hedonic happiness. Here is an interesting activity that you may take up, and yes, before I go on to explain the activity, there are many stories which we have all studied. I mean the generation I come from and the young Gen Z generation, and these stories are all full of virtues, values, characteristics, and it may make a very interesting read if we take up those stories from understanding these perspectives, whether what we are talking about in these lectures is actually reflected there. If you would like to take up an activity, some positive psychology topics are given below. Kindly make a note of these and identify where these might be represented in your socio-religio-cultural ethos: happiness, optimism and hope, well-being, self-efficacy, wisdom, courage, faith, spirituality, mindfulness, positive coping strategies, love, compassion, forgiveness, altruism, gratitude and empathy. And talking about stories, I am also reminded of the very popular television series made on Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, where Mowgli is the central character, and this could be another activity for you to explore which of these components are reflected in Mowgli's Stories of the Jungle Book. So I hope today's lecture was an interesting understanding for you with regard to the Eastern and Western perspectives and how they differ across focus, happiness and values, and also the thought processes entailed, orientation to time, etc. We shall be talking more about positive psychology and its various facets in the coming lecture. Thank you for being here today with me. Good day.